What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I'm making my post-game video from yesterday. I'm doing it obviously the day after. I apologize for that. I was literally yesterday I had been up the whole night, so not this past night, but the night before I was up all night. So I was up all day yesterday, and I was pretty tired and stuff, so I didn't last much longer after the game and everything. So that's why I'm making it today. So, you know, I'm going to go ahead and get into that. Obviously, I'm going to do my whole breakdown for you, you know, give you all the stats and everything, and then also give you my evaluation. Before I get into that, though, I do want to make some comments about, in regard to things that Brian Flores said in regarding to this whole like back and forth with Kenny Stills. First of all, a lot of people really liked his answer, and I'm going to tell you I didn't, and I'll tell you why. So first of all, and it's on, you know, I saw the video on, you know, Bleacher Report, on, I believe it's on like Twitter and stuff. You can find it on social media. I will retweet. There is a little video I will retweet of him talking about it. So I'm going to, I retweeted it out, so, you know, if you guys follow me or whatever, you guys can check it out on there for yourself. But I'm going to give you the gist of what he said. So basically, it was like 2 minutes worth of talking, and he kind of repeated himself a couple times. But the gist of what he said was that, one, that he's lived everything that they're protesting for, and I imagine that's the case, because of where he came from, right? He you know, he lived in New York or whatever. You know, he had to deal with like stop and frisk. He is a black man in America, right? So I have absolutely no doubt that he's had to deal with those things throughout his life. Without question, I will not, you know, argue that at all. It's super reasonable. Even if he had never ever experienced it, just because he's a black man in America and how prevalent it is, I have absolutely no reason to believe him, because I don't have any actual proof one way or the other. But I do believe him on that. So there's that. Second, he kept saying that he supports them, the players, Eric Reed and Kay Stills and Albert Wilson, blah, 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 in the fight that they are trying to fight, right? That they are fighting. So with that one, I'm a little less confident on. What I mean by that is, you know, he might mean that, right? And because he has experienced it all, he probably does want to see something change, whatever. But here's the thing. That's the first thing that you should have said. Not the company toe the line bullshit and say that you need to be a fucking company man. Because that what that tells me is that was your first instinct, your first priority. So that means you have, you know, you decide to take sides with the fucking racist supporting owner as your main priority over supporting your guys. So, you know, the right thing to do, and look, people often either, right, betray themselves or defend themselves in heat of the moment situations, right? So, or, you know, or candid situations, or, you know, what have you. Why? Because you get to see the real person, because they're not trying to, or when people are caught off guard, things like that, right? Because people are not trying to, they're not actively trying to, you know, hide anything, cover anything up necessarily. It's all just who they are, right? It's just their habits, their subconscious, and all of that stuff that comes to the surface. So he decided to initially defend the white male billionaire owner of the team that supports the racist bigot motherfucker initially over saying that he supports, his players, right? He didn't even say it at all in the first statement, right? All he said he told Kenny Stills that he needs to fucking, or his public statement is that he wishes that Kenny Stills would have talked to Stephen Ross first and that he needs to be a company man. He didn't even say, but I also support, no, he didn't even say that. He said the other thing first without that. And now because to me now it's just trying to backpedal and cover his ass. It's not fucking, anyway, whatever. So, yeah, so there's that, right? And then the third thing he kept saying was that he used the Jay-Z playlist or whatever at the beginning of practice to challenge Kenny Stills to do more on the field. And to also challenge him to drown out the distractions. What? That doesn't make any fucking sense. Completely lost me on this one because it doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever. First and foremost, again, Kenny Stills has proven on and off the field. He has a track record. He doesn't need to prove that shit right now, right? So you don't need to challenge him to prove those things. It's just absurd, right? And then like it just, none of that makes any sense, right? Like, and then the distraction thing, I mean, if you truly wanted to keep the distraction out, right? And and if you really did not want this situation to be a distraction, he handled it like completely counterproductive in a very illogical, nonsensical way. Because it was like all it did when he did that, it just added to the narrative of the you have to toe the line, right? And that's why the statements now, the most recent statements, just feel like walking back, and trying to cover his ass. Because he started off with saying you got to toe the line and you got to be a quote-unquote company man, right? And then he kind of doubled down by like disrespecting Kenny Stills essentially by then playing, because he knew that he's upset, but of course Kenny Stills is a gentleman and a fucking, a better man than all that, so he said all the right things and said that, he's not fucking angry and upset and blah blah blah, there's no bad blood, blah blah blah. But he didn't like how Jay-Z was doing and approaching this stuff, and so who in their right mind would think that's a good idea, right? Who in their right mind would think that after all of that, oh, you know what I should do is I should start off practice by playing 8 straight Jay-Z songs. First of all, that's not getting rid of the distraction, that's making it more of a distraction. That's putting it out in the front, in the forefront. Because think about it. If that didn't happen at all, then they would have just gone on with practice. There would have been no story about it. We wouldn't have been talking about it anymore, at least for that day, right? But then Kenny Stills took action. Then there was another story at a later time period of him playing Nas songs at his locker. So there's clearly a battle back and forth now. It's not keeping the distraction out. It's completely foolish. He totally lost me on that fucking last one. That was nothing more than just some fucking stupid excuse that makes absolutely fucking no sense. Just trying to justify his fucking sellout, the way he's selling out. Like, it's fucking stupid and it's fucking disgusting. Anyway, that's all I got to say about that. For right now, but it's total bullshit. And then because fucking other people okay, so just real quick, I'm sorry, so real quick, and I like this dude Greg Likens, right? But somebody, so first and foremost, this dude named Slim tweeted out, excellent on the Coach Flores, Jay-Z, Kenny Still stuff, right? So he replied to Greg Likens for whatever his post was. And then Greg Likens replied back, or retweeted and replied, really admired the way Flores opened up about the topic. No, I don't. It just, because, look, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, at some point, you know, if you're a good human being, you're going to say those things. Absolutely. Right. And you're going to, you know, you should walk it back because he was wrong. But that doesn't earn any of the respect back. Right. Because, again, if you really fundamentally believe that, that's where you should have started. You shouldn't have told him, essentially, hey, shut the fuck up, bow your head, and do what you're supposed to do. Do what the company says. Be a company man. Nah, fuck that bullshit. Hell nah. Fuck that. That's bullshit. Total bullshit. 100% bullshit all the fucking way. And then you double down and make things worse by, you know, essentially then spitting in his face again by playing the Jay-Z songs. 8 straight Jay-Z songs. Not 1, not 2, not 3, 8 straight songs. And then you want to come out and be like, oh, but, you know, but I support that what they're doing, and it's because I've lived through it, which, again, I'm not trying to take that away from him, but it's a hollow reasoning at this point in this context, because, you know, oh, well, I support them after all the stuff that I already did because I lived it, and my reason why is because I'm trying to challenge him to do better on the field, even though he already has a proven track record and a really good work ethic, and he's one of the most respected players on the team, and I want to challenge him to drown out the distraction by putting it right in his face and causing this little back and forth battle. Are you fucking kidding me? What about that is admirable? What about that is fucking, you know, good or fucking righteous or, you know, whatever? Nah, that motherfucker is walking it back. He's trying to cover his ass, and it's fucking bullshit, and it's disgusting. Because at the end of the day, guess what? That rich white billionaire male pays his checks. And guess what? That motherfucker gave him a head coaching job. He paid him, I mean, theoretically, he has a guaranteed 5-year contract worth millions. I don't know if he'll actually end up seeing that. My prediction is that he probably won't actually end up seeing that, and that he'll just get fired and scapegoated later on when everything goes to shit, as always happens with the quarterback and the head coach, regardless of whether it's their fault or not. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It's usually a mixed bag, to be fair. But my guess is that's what'll happen. But, you know, right now, he made the choice to support the white male billionaire over the, granted, Kenny Stills does make millions of dollars. Absolutely. But all of his rhetoric and all of his actions prove that the things that he says he means. And he uses his money and his platform to give a voice to disenfranchised and disenfranchised and people who are discriminated against, right? So it's fucking, and up to this point, I have given Stephen Ross the benefit of the doubt, even though there were a couple minor questionable things in the past, because of everything he has done and because the organization that he runs rise. But but all of that gets negated when you support somebody in a position of power who is as evil as our president is, and despicable as our president is. Okay? Because then your actions show that you don't really mean it and you care more about the money than you actually care about the real change. It's ridiculous. Anyway, that's really all that I'm going to say about that for now. Obviously, this is not going to go away. It's going to be a continuing thing, and in large part because of Flores and Stephen Ross. You know, so whatever. That excuse of fucking trying to keep it not a distraction is bullshit. Okay, so now finally getting on to yesterday's game. Obviously, it was preseason game 3, which is technically the dress rehearsal game. The problem I have with that, though, is, you know, normally it is, right? And so, like, you know, I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick and the supposed first team offense got, you know, the first half, and then Josh Rosen got the second half. So in a sense, it lived up to the, you know, moniker of dress rehearsal, right? But in a very shallow sense, because that's really as far as it goes, right? In other words, the starting lineup played the first half. That's really about as far as it goes, because there were a lot of players that we would expect to be in the starting lineup not playing. Who might that be? Let's see. TJ McDonald, Rashad Jones, Jakeem Grant, Albert Wilson, Laramie Tunsil, Devontae Parker, and then, you know, important backups and special teams players like Chase Allen, right? So just a ton of guys that, so like, how do we even, and same thing for last week. A lot of these guys weren't in. Xavier Howard didn't play last week. I don't think he played this week either. So how do we actually even evaluate the first team, right? And so the first team definitely did terrible, atrocious against their first team squad. Now, we did do better later in the game, and we ended up winning, but I don't think we can read too much into that and pull, like, when we read into that, I don't think that, it, you know, it really translates into a lot of, you know, positive forecasting, meaning, you know, I don't think that there's a lot in there to say that, you know, we're going to end up having success, and I'll break that down some more as we go. So let me get into the stats real quick. First of all, the first good thing though, right? So this was a mixed bag kind of game. Last week was too, but I thought that last week the offense was just purely atrocious the entire game. Whereas I did not think that this time. And last week the defense played a really solid game overall, despite having a bunch of guys out. So, and this week is more of a mixed bag, because the offense wasn't completely shitty the entire day. It was just shitty for the entire time that we had the starting team out there, which again isn't even really the starting team, because a lot of them, you know, aren't on the field, and they probably won't play next week yet either, because that's, you know, it's the final game. So like, when are we even, Kenyon Drake not out there, when are we going to get an evaluation of the actual first team? Well, it's not going to come until the first week of the season. So that's why the success that we had in this game, the success that we had in the first game, I don't think it's going to be an accurate reflection of what's going to happen in the season. I do not believe that it's going to be mirrored. I believe it's very superficial, right? So anyway, stats. We did win the game 22-7, so that is the first bright spot of the game. We had 271 total yards. They had 243. Obviously, we want to try and at least break 300. And, you know, so, but again, so a lot of the offense came later on in the game against, like, backups. And that's why Josh Rosen, I believe, is getting hyped up again too much, because he was playing against a lot of backups. But also, to be fair, though, his lines were breaking down a lot. And to be fair, he did do some good things with his legs a little bit, which I will get into as we continue. So, but we only had 182 passing yards. They had 176. Again, the defense did really well overall. And you see, and the difference between this week and last week, and why we actually won this game, was because the offense at least played some complimentary football at some point in this game. Whereas they didn't do that at all last week, hence why we lost. This week we actually won because of that. Now, if we were playing their first team offense and defense the whole game, I seriously doubt that would have been the outcome, and I very much believe that our offense would not have been as efficient at any point during the game. And it was evident because our first team offense did shitty against their first team defense. So anyway, and then we had 89 rushing yards. They had 67. So obviously we'd like to try and at least break 100 yards on the ground. So 300 yards passing, 100 yards on the ground. I would say so 400 yards of total offense is really where you want to be. Or no, I'm sorry, 300. No, what the fuck am I talking about? 300 total yards of offense with 200 yards of passing and 100 yards on the ground. Now, whatever. Those are just fluid, flexible, soft targets, right? Soft minimums. Obviously, you can win games and not meet those, but that's usually because then it ends up being a defensive heavy game. But as far as evaluating like a good offense, that's what you want to see out of your offense. At least 300 total yards, 200 in passing, and 100 rushing. And then ideally 5 yards per play, although, over 4 is, solid. Which we did last week. We were 4.2. This week we were 4.4, but we allowed 4.3 on the other side. They did have a fumble and an interception. This next one is interesting to me. This next game statistic, and I have a feeling this I get the feeling this isn't right, but this is these stats came from NFL.com, and it goes based off of every single play. So, I guess it is what it is, and it's a good thing, but it doesn't seem right to me. But anyway, so third down conversion rate, we were 42%. We held them to 10%, which is fantastic, right? Which is absolutely fantastic, and another indicator that the defense was doing really well. Now, 42%, you still want it to be higher than that even. You still want it to be like over 50%. You want to make it more than half the times, right? A good offense will be able to get, even higher than that, like 60%. Once you start getting there, then it's like teams don't usually break like 70%, but you at least would like to try and have, like, if your offense is good, you should be able to break 50%. But 42% actually does seem a bit high to me, because we went 3 and out like the first 4 drives of the game. We punted, I'll get to that later, but we punted like 7 times. Like, the offense was not doing much of anything. But and to be fair, so I would venture to guess though that if you broke down it by half or by quarter, you would see that the first 2 quarters of the game, the first half of the game, that third down conversion rate would be absolutely putrid, right? It'd be like 10% or something like that. But then I guess you would probably see it spike, in the second half when we were playing nothing but like 3rd, 4th, and 5th string guys, and so on. But you have Josh Rosen in there, right, and so on and so forth. So, yeah. Anyway, so that does seem a little off, but it is. It's I'm reporting it just as it is. I'm not like changing it. That was the stat line. So we were 42, and that's good. So you do. And I think that was even an improvement over last week. So overall, and again, also too, a lot of those guys that were on the field probably won't even be on the team. So you do got to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt as well. And unfortunately, I don't think that our starting offense is going to, but we'll see, we'll see how it goes. Time of possession, 32 minutes, 32 seconds. For us, 27 minutes, 28 seconds for them. We still had far too many penalties with 9, but they did have, 12. Getting into the passing game, Ryan Fitzpatrick did lead the way, 12 of 18 for 66.7 completion percentage, 126 yards, a touchdown with no interceptions. And then Josh Rosen was 5 of 7 in the second half for 71.4% completion percentage with 59 yards. So, that stat line, Not a lot of passes, not a lot of yards. Good completion percentage, though, but didn't throw any touchdowns. Also, no interceptions, which is good, but it's kind of, it's kind of just whatever. But he did add a little bit of production with his legs, which he's not really known for, but that was also in large part because the offensive line was breaking down. Gardner Minshew was 17 out of 27, 63% with 141 yards. Nick Foles was 6 of 10, 60%, 48 yards, and 1 score, 1 interception. Rushing, Patrick Laird led the way for us. 6 rushes for 26 yards, 1 touchdown, and a 4.3 average. Once again, he led the way for us last week as well. I think Patrick Laird is one of those guys that is making a name for himself and showing he deserves a spot on this roster. He's certainly been outperforming Mark Walton, and Mark Walton does have, I know he came to some settlement or whatever in his off the field legal problems, but he does have those. And Patrick Laird is also younger and I think a bit cheaper than Mark Walton as well. So he's making a case for himself. I actually would think that Patrick Laird will probably make the team behind Kalen Ballage and Kalen Ballage and Kenyon Drake. Although we do also have Myles Gaskin, who was a late round draft pick for us, so that almost guarantees him a spot. But if he doesn't make the roster, then hopefully he at least makes the practice squad, and that's definitely a possibility. I don't know if we'll keep 4 running backs, although he did some good things on special teams as well, so maybe. And we are having some minor injury problems with our guys. I mean, Kenyon Drake obviously hasn't been in the past couple weeks. Kalen Ballage was out for a minute. So maybe we'll keep 4. We'll see. But he's definitely making a name for himself and a guy to keep an eye on. Josh Rosen, like I said, had some production on the ground, but in large part because the offensive line was breaking down so bad. But good on him. He had 4 rushes for 23 yards and a 5.8 average. Good on him, especially considering the fact that it's not really known, or he's not really known for that, and that's not really generally part of his game. Like, we don't do a whole lot of bootlegs and play action stuff, or he doesn't, rather, not we. He doesn't, right? He's not really known for that so much. But see, the thing is I would venture to guess that, in real playing time against the starting defense, he's probably going to just get hammered a lot. Anyway, so, which, we saw with him in Arizona last year. Anyway, Myles Gaskin had 6 rushes for 20 yards and a 3.3 average. Kalen Ballage had 12 rushes, 17 yards, and a 1.4. And so to speak about that, so look, if you look at this, Patrick Laird, Josh Rosen, and Myles Gaskin, a 3.3 average from Myles Gaskin, a 5.8 from Rosen, and they all had above 20 yards. All of that came in the second half against backups to backups to backups, right? Kalen Ballage was in the first team squad against their first team and maybe some second team guys. 12 rushes, 17 yards, a 1.4 average. So you can see the disparity there. Leonard Fournette led the way for them, 7 rushes, 27 yards, 3.9 average. Raquel Armstead had 8 rushes, 18 yards, and a 2.3. Gardner Minshew had 1 for 18 yards, obviously an 18 average. Receiving, Mike Gesicki led the way for us, 3 of 3, 59 yards. That's good. I hope he continues to come along. Isaiah Ford, 2 of 2, 45 yards. Nick O'Leary, 2 for 3, 35. Mark Walton, 4 for 20 yards and a touchdown. Kay Stills, 1 of 2 for 14 yards. CJ Board led the way for them, 4 of 5, 56 yards. Trey McBride, 3 of 6, 31. D.D. Westbrook, 4 of 7, 29 yards and a touchdown. Terrell Pryor, 3 of 4, 26 yards. Devontae Mays, 3 of 5, 21 yards. And Leonard Fournette, 2 of 3 for 19 yards. Fumbles, Preston Williams had a fumble, but it was not lost. Gardner Minshew had 1 and lost 1. Defensive statistics. So Eric Rowe led the way for us. with 5 solo tackles and 1 interception and 2 passes defensed. Eric Rowe was the guy who I figured at the beginning to be the lead for the opposite cornerback spot, and I think he probably still will land that. There are some guys who are making a little bit of noise. Montre Hardage and I can't remember the other one off the top of my head. But I think Eric Rowe probably will, and he definitely upped his chances in this one with his performance. And he was definitely, you know, a bright spot of the game as well. Jerome Baker was 5 solo tackles, 2 assisted with a tackle for loss. He was moving around, doing some things. Torrey McTyer was 4 solo tackles. Nate Orchard, another guy that I think will probably make the team and who has been, a guy to keep an eye on and who's been making, noise and a name for himself. 3 solo tackles, another 2 sacks and 2 tackles for loss. He had 1 sack and 1 tackle for loss last week. Sam McGuavian still all over the place. 3 solo tackles, 1 assisted, and 1 tackle for loss. Minka Fitzpatrick doing some good things. 2 solo tackles with a pass defense. Terrell Hanks had a solo tackle for loss, and a forced fumble. And then we had Tyrone Holmes add a fumble recovery. The forced fumble that Terrell Hanks had was the one on Gardner Minshew. It was a strip sack, and Tyrone Holmes got the recovery for us. Also, I just want to mention Chris Lamons. I believe he's a safety, or no, maybe he is a corner. I don't know. Anyway, he's a defensive player. He's a defensive back, and I believe, and he was making some serious noise on special teams, and he did some good things for us on the defense last week too. So when he did play. So that's also another guy to keep an eye on that I think might end up making the team. Anyway, for them, Datone Jones led the way, 4 solo, 1 assisted, 2 tackles for loss. So check this out. And this is also, and this happened a lot last week. So one of the differences between last week and this week were there were less sacks. Last week there were a handful of sacks and a bunch of tackles for loss. This week there weren't so many sacks. There was just 1, I believe, but there were 12 tackles for loss. 12 tackles for loss. That is insane, and that is unacceptable if the offense wants to be anywhere kind of not even good, just okay. Like, you can't have that. Like I said, DJ Alexander had 4 solo, 2 assisted with a tackle for loss. CJ Rivas, 4 solo, 2 tackles for loss. Andrew Wingard, 4 solo tackles. Josh Robinson, 3 solo tackles. Leon Jacobs, 3 solo. Connor Strachan, 3 solo, 1 assisted, and a tackle for loss. Josh Allen, 3 solo, 1 assisted, 2 tackles for loss. Dwayne Smoot, 2 solo tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, and an interception. No, I'm sorry. He didn't have an interception. That was from previous. I forgot to change that in my little template here. Kalani Vaca Mailalo had 2 solo tackles and a tackle for loss. DJ Hayden had 1 solo tackle, 1 tackle for loss, and Mike Hughes had a solo tackle and a tackle for loss. Ronnie Harrison threw in a pass defense. In the kicking game, Jason Sanders was 3 of 3 with a long of 46. He was 1 of 2 on his extra points. He missed one of them. Josh Lambo was 0 for 1 on his field goals, but 1 of 1 on his extra points. In the punt game, Matt Hawk had 5 punts with a 52 average. Solid showing there with a long of 57, but he didn't get any of them inside the 20, which is, not obviously preferential. We want to try and pin them as far back as possible, but part of that had to deal with the fact that a lot of those punts were coming because we were pretty deep in our own territory. So a couple indictments there on the team. Logan Cook for them had 6 punts with a 47 average. He landed 4 of those with inside the 20 with a long of 57. In the kickoff game, Mark Walton had 2 returns with a 13.5 average and a long of 16. Trey McBride and Michael Walker both had 1 return for 27 yards, obviously a 27 average, and DJ Chark had 1 for 7 yards. Punt return, Preston Williams had 3 with a .7 average. That's not good. With a long of 2. And TJ Ramming, the new receiver that they just picked up, had 2 returns with a 1 average and a long of 2. Quadri Henderson had 3 returns for them, 13.3 average with a long of 25. And Keelan Cole had 2 returns that went absolutely nowhere. So, like I said, so the overall takeaways from this game, we won. That's fun. The first team offense, again, was absolutely putrid. But again, first team offense. But we don't even really know because we couldn't evaluate a lot of the people that would be in first team since they weren't here. Although the first team offensive line was there minus Laramie Tunsil, and they did not perform well at all. 12 tackles for loss, most of which came then. No running game in the first half. It was just absolute garbage. We did pick it up, but again, you gotta, we did win. We did have some more offense late in the game. But again, you have to take that with a grain of salt because you have Josh Rosen, who is a solid quarterback and has some skill, playing against, third, fourth, fifth string guys in the second half of the game. And, a lot of those guys probably aren't going to be on the team, so on and so forth. So take it with a grain of salt. And, we really, unfortunately, mostly because, or in large part because the past 2 weeks, a lot of our starting guys on both sides of the ball haven't been in, it's hard to get a proper evaluation. So, unfortunately, we're not really going to be able to evaluate this team until it's live bullets and it counts towards our record, so it's kind of like negating the purpose of preseason for us in some ways, not in all ways, obviously, because they are getting to evaluate all these young guys and try and help figure out, how the 53 man roster is going to shape up. But we're not getting to evaluate our first team squads, and that's what's most important. So, that's that. I'm going to go ahead and end it there, guys. I hope that you do enjoy my videos and my perspective and all of that stuff. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.